That in-person presentation is really important. Does it feel like a home? Does it feel like it's lived in hard? Or does it feel like, man, I could drop my bags in here and this would be awesome. This would check every box for us. That matters, obviously. You know, when we talk about documentation being the scouting report, that is the due diligence, basically, right? So if you have permits for work, be ready to pull them up. If you have, you know, hey, this is one thing that we didn't get addressed, but we have a quote from somebody, have it up, ready to go. You know, documentation can be a bevy of different things. Can it be a plat? It could be a plat of the property. It could be a easement or a right of way that shows, hey, our driveway connects with this other person's to here. Here's our maintenance agreement. So we're responsible for this portion. They're responsible for that portion. Like, the more data and the more information that you are providing a consumer that is looking to purchase, the more comfortable they are going to feel making that decision quicker and coming to the conclusion, hey, this is either something I'm super ready to move forward on and I feel really prepared, or not. Like, hey, I appreciate all this information. This might not be the right fit for me. And you'd rather figure that out up front as a seller than figure it out during inspections. I would say the biggest pricing mistake right now is pricing to memory. It's not really pricing it to market, it's pricing it to memory. Sellers remember what the neighbor got in 2022. It feels like yesterday. Trust me, I get COVID brain myself. It feels like it was a few weeks ago that they got that number, but actually in reality, it was 4 years ago. And they remember it being a multiple offer situation. They remember people waiving inspections. They remember buyers acting like every house was the last helicopter out. And I got to be honest with you, it's not the market that we're in. Will there be cases of stuff like that or buyers behaving like that? Sure, no doubt. There still is. But is that what we're seeing on average? No, it is not. They are very payment sensitive buyers, and they're a lot more selective than they have been in years past. They have lived with higher rates long enough to be pretty disciplined. And that payment shock, that's not really there anymore, especially for the buyers that are just now starting to look. This is what they know. This is their normal. It's not, you know, we're not dealing with the people that were originally shopping with 2.5% rates, and now all of a sudden it's 6.5%, and they're wondering what the hell happened. These are people that are not shocked by that, but they do want to justify making that payment. So it's got to look the part, and they're simply deciding whether that payment is worth it, right? That's the difference right now. And the most dangerous seller sentence that I can think of right now is, let's just try it. Try what? Try being ignored. Try burning that first critical week on market. Try training buyers to wait for a price cut, because that's not a strategy that's going to win. Let's hope. You really only get one chance at a first impression, right? You hear that all the time. And every listing gets really one big introduction, one. And the first few days are really when the serious buyers notice. The save searches are on fire. You know, you have agents sending the links to their customers like, oh my God, wow, look at this. Look at the photos on this one. This one's great. This checks all your boxes. Buyers will text it to their spouse while they're at work. They will, you know, people that have really been watching for whatever your price point is for really months, they're going to click on that thing, boom, immediately. That's your launch. And if you miss the market during that launch, you're really not going to get that same energy back. You're going to get reservations. You're going to get people that have a price reduction 3 weeks later. You're going to get attention, no doubt, but it's not the same energy that you were going to get 3 weeks prior at the launch, right? And buyers aren't thinking at this point with a price reduction, oh, look, it's a new listing. They're thinking, seller kind of shot their wad, didn't they? What do you think it's worth? Do you think it's worth seeing? I don't know. What's wrong with it? That's the conversations that we have all the time. And there might not be anything wrong with it. It might just had a bad quarterback, right? But that psychology of the buyer is what sellers sometimes underestimate. We see it more than, again, we'd like to admit. And as an agent, I will tell you, a lot of listing agents, you want the damn listing. So you're going to take it at the sellers. But why not you know what? Sure, let's try it. Let's give it a shot. But is it the best thing for them? No. Back to this pricing segment. You really do have to get very, very specific when it comes to pricing. You can't rely on, let's take waterfront, for example, right? Water depth matters when it comes to pricing. View certainly matters. Shoreline condition matters a lot more than you think. And that means, whether you're bulkheaded, you're rip-wrapped, you've got a pier in either good condition or meh condition, elevation, how high are you up from the water? Flood zone, a lot of those things kind of coalesce with each other. What's your distance to open water? Are you tucked way back in a shallow creek? Or are you 5 minutes to open water and to all the waterfront restaurants and fishing spots that everybody wants to go to? Are you on a protected creek versus that wide open bay view? All of those things matter because you're going to attract a very specific buyer to each of those things. And the buyer is not really just buying a house when it comes to these lifestyle properties. They are, in fact, buying that lifestyle. Well-prepared listing absolutely is going to get the attention. You'll command it. But if it asks the buyer to absorb too much uncertainty at too high of a price, the buyer is going to hesitate, and hesitation is going to kill momentum. No momentum, no deal. Very simple, right? Presentation matters again. And I don't mean just pretty, right? Pretty helps. Really good photos help. Staging helps. Paint, lighting, landscaping. Talked about that a little bit. All of that matters, but presentation is bigger than aesthetics. Risk reduction, okay? Buyers want to feel confident, especially in a market like this. And that means you got to be prepared with, again, information. Buyers are going to be asking, what is the roof age? What is the HVAC age? Is there flood insurance? Is there, a special tax district? What is that? Is there septic? What does that mean? Is there well? What do I have to do for that? Is there permits for the work that was just done? Is there a repair that needs to get completed on the pier? Do I own the pier or do I share it with somebody else? Or is it community property? And do you think I could expand the deck? Could I remove trees? What are some of the critical area restrictions? What is this going to cost me after closing? What are the utility bills? That's a buyer's internal dialogue. It's a lot of questions. The more of those that you can answer up front, the better off you're going to be. You're going to be quieting the doubt that is inevitably seeping into their mind when they're walking into these places. And if your listing doesn't fill in those answers, the buyer fills in the blanks themselves. And when they do that, it's probably not going to be the same answers that you would provide. Now, not every seller needs some major renovation in order to prep a property for market. And that's really not the point, right? Sometimes all you need to do is a lot of little things in order to prep a place appropriately. So paint is a big one. It's one of the easiest ones, probably one of the least expensive ones. Paint, all right? Touch it up, neutralize the color scheme, and you don't have to go all white or all gray or whatever the hell the trend is these days, but make sure that it's clean, okay? Make sure that there's not like blotches of things here and there. There's no scuffs on the walls that are banging from suitcases or what have you. Patch up holes. Having it clean is good, all right? Lighting. You got a fixture that looks like it was put in 2005, swap that bad boy out, okay? You got some lights that are mismatched in colors. One is, a warm white light, and the other one looks like you're being beamed up from a UFO. Why don't we get them all uniform? Okay, let's do soft, warm white. That is what people want. They do not need, halogen lighting, okay? Not in a house. Deep cleaning. Super critical. Super, super, super critical. One of the things that a lot of owners miss when they get the house ready for market is a deep clean. Why is that important? Because you have to teeter that line between being a house that is lived in so that people can believe that they can live in it, and also a brand new house, right? What do I mean by that? You have to be able to walk that line so that people feel like they can see themselves in the house and they don't look at all of the things that might be key indicators that somebody else lives there. So if somebody goes into a listing and the baseboards have dog hair all over them, that's gross. Clean it up. If somebody goes into a bathroom and there are stains inside of the toilet bowl, that's gross. Clean it up. If someone goes in and there's toothpaste in the sink, there's dishes that are scattered about in the kitchen, or it's one of those things, wow, this place photographed well, but it smells like a kennel, clean it up. That means you might have to shampoo the rugs. You might have to replace the rugs entirely. You might have to dry clean the curtains. You might have to do a lot of stuff that you really have never thought of before. You might have to wash the walls. You might have to clean all of the return vents in the property, because when somebody looks up into a return and they see dust that has been collected there since 1972, clean it up. Okay? When a listing is clean, it's easy for somebody to envision themselves in it. Decluttering, an absolute no-brainer. If you are taking it with you, box it up anyways. If you're not taking it with you, take it to the curb, take it to the dump, sell it. Do something. In real estate, particularly when you are listing your house, less is more. Bottom line, clear those counters up. You can have pops of color here and there. You can have little tchotchkes here and there, but by and large, you need to be clean. You need to look like a model house. I tell people this all the time. Builders, especially the big ones, the D.R. Hortons, the Toll Brothers, the NVRs, they spend millions in market research every year. And what that research tells them is what consumers are looking for. They hire companies to come in and stage their model homes in every community that they're in. And guess what sells every freaking time? Those model homes. Because people walk into those and they get excited. Why do they get excited? Because it looks like somebody lives there but doesn't really live there, and it's to the nines. They have the right paint scheme. They have the right decor. Everything modernized to what today's buyer is looking for. They have the right furniture in place. They have the right mix of artwork and foliage, usually fake plants, by the way. They never die. Fantastic. That is what people want to see. There's a reason that builders spend that money. They do that research because that is what the buyer wants to see. If you can make your home feel like a model home, it's going to, again, make it a lot more attractive to not just one buyer that comes through, every buyer that comes through, because they said, wow, this is incredible. What a place. I could see ourselves here. But they're not going to do that. They're not going to be able to do that with all your crap in it. So decluttering is critical. It's probably one of the most critical. That and the deep clean are the two most critical. Then you can start on the other things. We already mentioned landscaping. I don't need to touch it up again, but weed the beds, put in fresh mulch, mow the grass. If it's a vacant property, find somebody, find a neighborhood kid, find a landscaping company. Do what you got to do to keep it maintained. Keep it maintained. You don't want to have a place photographed beautifully and look like a model home, and then people get there and it looks like the Sahara. That's not good. They don't want that. It's icky. It tells people, damn, well, that's embarrassing, or that sucks, because clearly they haven't been here or they don't give a shit. And if it looks like that and they get that feeling, they're going to go into the house with questions about everything. Whether you've updated all the stuff or not, they're just going to be left with that doubt in their mind. I don't know. Even if I like the house, God, there's a lot that I might perceive needs to be done. So do take care of the landscaping, okay? Small repairs. It's another sticking point that I have with a lot of people. So we meet with sellers on a weekly basis. If it's something that's bugged you, As somebody who's lived in the house, take care of it. If it's a step that creaks, got to fix that step, fix it. If it's a patch of carpet that it needs to be stretched, it needs to be replaced, take care of it. There's a lot of things within each property that really only the people that live there are going to notice, right? But at the same time, if it is something that would bother you, if you were in the market to buy a place, why don't you address it for the people that are going to be buying your house? And if you need advice on whether to address it or not, that's what your agent is for. They will tell you straight up, don't worry about that. That's not a big deal. Or, you know what? That is a great idea. Take care of that. Again, one less objection that somebody could have. And it might be something like updating lighting. It might be something like, swapping out all of the light switch plates from that off-white to bright white. It might be the same thing with, outlets, covers, or outlets themselves, bringing them into 2026 instead of whatever era they were put in. Again, case by case, house by house issue, but having things like that, things like fresh hardware. You got new doorknobs on there? Amazing. You got new, you got a new front door installed or a freshly painted front door, so you're not seeing dents and scuffs and things of that nature. It's doing those little things like that. Yeah, they can add up and it can be an investment, but it is well worth the investment. It's a lot more elbow grease than anything else. It's going to lead to better photography, better videography, which means better storytelling, and it's a better experience for both you and the consumers that are coming through. The goal is really not to make every house perfect, because no house is, no matter how incredible. Even some of our, $10 million houses, I guarantee you the people that are in there would still change stuff. But the goal is to remove easy objections, right? So you just don't want the buyer building a repair list during the showing. That's the big goal, right? You want the buyer picturing their life there. And for properties in our region, presentation a lot of times includes documentation. At least really good presentation is going to include documentation. That means, do I have the ages of the systems available for people? Do I have maintenance records, septic information, well information, flood insurance information if it's a property that is in a flood zone, elevation certificate if it's something that might be in a flood zone but doesn't have to, require flood insurance. You want that elevation certificate, pier or shoreline documentation. Hey, maybe it doesn't have a pier in place right now, but the sellers have a permit in hand and documentation. It is already under contract with a contractor, a marine contractor, to go ahead and install a pier here. And it's going to be done at this day. We have this money in escrow with them, or the shoreline's getting taken care of. Similar thing, right? Do I have HOA documents? So I have community documents up front that I can deliver to the buyer so that they understand what they are getting into. What are the covenants, the restrictions, the rules? What are the bylaws? Give me everything that I can possibly have. Again, it's about eliminating objections. What's the fees? Or that, am I already towards the top of my budget? What are the fees with this? What am I getting for those fees? Is it something that's going to give me comfort, or is it something that's going to feel like it's going to be putting too much stress on my wallet every month or every quarter or every year to be a part of this community? So again, the goal is not to overwhelm the buyer. The goal is to make the property feel understandable and safer, right? Safer typically gets offers. So Chesapeake Bay in general, it's really one of the most powerful lifestyle stories in the region. Yeah, we're talking water, access, boating, history, summer, views, community, all that stuff. All that sells, man. It really does. But a Bay Area property can also come with complexity. Complexity is not going to kill a deal by itself, but unexplained complexity can. So that's an important distinction. What do I mean by that? A buyer can, might be perfectly comfortable with flood insurance if they understand the cost of it. They might be comfortable moving to septic if they can see the records and they have an understanding of how it works. And maybe they've been in the city their entire life. They've never been on septic, so they don't know how it works. But if they see maintenance records and that it's been taken care of, and they get shown what it is and how it can differ and what to do, they usually get pretty comfortable with it. They might be comfortable too with critical area rules if they know what those rules mean for the property, what limitations it can put in place. They might be comfortable with even shoreline maintenance if they understood the condition and future responsibility. So a lot of this discussion is going to be geared towards waterfront properties. It's not everything that we do, but it is a big focus on it and a big focus of our business. When somebody that's never lived on the water before finally moves to the water or acquires a property that is waterfront, it is a rather big undertaking, but it's one that, like, they have a pretty good understanding of what they're getting into. Generally, they've done some research, but explaining the nuances and the future responsibility is crucial. Generally speaking, they've got money. They were able to handle it, but they got to know what to do. And I feel like that's a lot of walks of life. Like, I'll be able to handle it if you just tell me what to do, right? And what makes buyers nervous is not really knowing what to do, right? It's that unknown element. So try to give another example. Around waterfronts, those are going to come with critical area and buffer rules that matter. A buyer might want to know whether or not they can remove trees. We see this all the time, especially on the waterfront properties. Can I remove the trees on this? I want to improve the view. Can I expand the outdoor living space a little bit? Can I repair a pier? Can I build a pool in here? We get that a lot. What's involved? What kind of cost and timing is involved in protecting that shoreline? Like, we sit up pretty high, which I like because I don't have to worry about floods. But at the same time, like, I can see that they don't have their seller right now really don't have anything in place down there, so I just don't want the whole hillside to erode away over time. So what can we do to improve the shoreline protection? What am I looking at there? And every now and again, we'll get somebody that wants to change the entire footprint of the house. But depending on where that house is, there's a lot of rules and zoning issues that might prohibit you from doing that, or they might influence the means in which you are able to do that, right? So that might change the building envelope. So maybe you are allowed to expand the footprint, but where you're trying to expand is going to be different than what you probably had in mind. So those are questions that are not really always simple. They're very property specific. They can depend on a lot of different things. They depend on the county, the zoning, the permits, the environmental rules, the prior approvals that were given to that property, to a previous owner or this current owner. But the seller who is prepared will typically have a better conversation than a seller who says, I really don't know. You'll have to figure that out on your own. Because a buyer hears that and thinks, all right, well, now I need to price in risk for this, because obviously they either know something and they're not telling me, or they don't know anything and now I got more work to do. And when they price in that risk, it's either a reduced offer, we're asking for credits, we're going to just delay the decision, or we're just walking away. That's it. That's a buyer right now. Buyer mentality, I should say. So if you are selling near the bay, you're not just selling the view, you have to sell confidence. You want to show the lifestyle, obviously, but you have to organize everything that surrounds it, because, we can call it the file. Organize the file, because the strongest listings are not just beautiful, they're also legible. They're something that the buyer can easily understand what they're buying. They can understand what they're taking on. They can understand what has been done, what may need attention. And when they have that understanding, they can move. Let's talk about affordability, because sellers sometimes think it's a buyer's problem, right? It's a buyer problem. You just can't afford the house. Technically, you're not wrong, sellers. Buyers got to qualify. Buyers got to make that payment. Buyers got to decide what they can afford. But here's the practical truth. The buyer's payment becomes the seller's problem the moment that the buyer cannot make the numbers work, right? So Freddie Mac recently had the 30-year fixed rate at 6.48% as of June 4. So this past week, that's not 3%, which, a lot of people are coming from 3%. Buyers know that. They're not casually stretching anymore. A buyer can love the house and still hate the payment. They can have good income, but still be cautious. They can even have a lot to put down towards this to really mitigate that payment, the interest that goes in with it. But still, I don't want to be house poor. That's a constant sentiment that we hear from buyers. Yes, I can do it, but I don't want to be eating ramen every night. I don't want to be house poor. They want to be smart about what they're doing. This is why sellers have to stop thinking that I'm just selling square footage and selling 4 bedrooms and I'm selling a renovated kitchen. I'm, a dock or a view or a garage or a school district. No. You're selling all of that. You're selling that total package, and you're also selling a payment. And that's a tough thing to get your head around as a seller. Payment has to make sense to your likely buyer pool. An Annapolis buyer is going to be weighing lifestyle, walkability, schools, commute, scarcity. A Severna Park buyer is probably going to be thinking about schools, space, move up value. A Kent Island buyer might be thinking about Bay Bridge access and lifestyle. Again, in a lot of pockets in Kent Island, your money can stretch further, but what's the trade-off? It's the Bay Bridge. We're a little bit further from everything, so we do have to drive. They've got to be factoring that in to their situation as well. A Talbot County buyer might be thinking second home use, boating, privacy, whether that property is worth the drive. A Southern Maryland buyer might be thinking about commute. Usually it's a defense-related employment, defense contractor or military. They might be thinking about family spaces, monthly affordability. They're different buyers, which means there's different math that goes into these. Same principle, though. Put simply, the deal's got to make sense. And when the math is tight, terms are going to matter more, which brings us to the part of the market that a lot of sellers resist. Concessions. You're selling a property, but you're only selling it if you have a deal, right? A lot of sellers will hear the word concession and they immediately think that they're losing. It can feel that way, but that's not always the case. It's not. A concession is not automatically, surrendering or waving the white flag. It can be structured appropriately, and it can be a credit that can help a buyer with cash to close so that you're able to get that deal to the table and done, and you get your money. That would be nice. It could be a rate buy down, right? So that you help that buyer make monthly payments more comfortable. It could be a repair credit that just keeps the deal moving forward, right? Hey, maybe we tried a lot of stuff to prep and get this place ready. There was something that was found in inspections we didn't really have any idea about. We really don't have the time to address it, but we did have a quote done. We're willing to give you a credit for what that quote came in at. Boom. Buyer accepts, lines up, everything else, we're good. Flexible timing can solve a buyer problem, right? So sometimes the concession might not be monetary, it might be timing, which time is money. Yeah, I get it. But it won't be something that pops up on the settlement statement unless you look at the prorations, right? The fast responses from a seller are also going to reduce anxiety for a buyer. Clean disclosures are going to prevent renegotiation down the line. Better documentation are going to protect your leverage. There's just so many different things that could be considered concessions, but it's really just negotiating to get a deal done that's going to work for both parties. It's still, and we tell this to people all the time, what a house is worth is what a seller is willing to let it go for and what a buyer is willing to pay for it. Most of these deals are financed. If they're cash, awesome. You can skip one step, but most of these deals are financed, and we still have to maintain a space where both sides are feeling comfortable about moving forward. And these are things that you really only navigate through experience. So having somebody that's really done it before is pretty critical for a lot of buyers in a market that's pretty niche and specific. Having said that, it is a case-by-case scenario. But these things that we consider concessions are really just avenues to get the deal to the table and done and closed. You're not in the market to sell your house and just have a nice, pretty listing up there and have contracts on it. You're trying to part ways with it. So what are we doing to part ways with it? Sometimes we're going to need to bend. We won't break. Sometimes we're going to need to bend a little bit. And most sellers do have a contingency in there, right? They got a little bit of wiggle room in there. Not all of them, but some of them do. And we got to be able to exercise that sometimes if it means getting the deal across the table, right? This is especially true when it comes to close call buyers. These are buyers who really like your house and maybe one other house, and the buyer can make the payment, but it really kind of feels a little tight, and but they love the property. They might be a little bit nervous about insurance if there's, maybe an older roof or something. There probably is like one or two hangups that they have on the thing. Buyers who want waterfront, but really not sure what future maintenance looks like. Buyer who's not saying no yet, but they're not fully comfortable saying yes. And that's where terms and some of these concessions can kind of decide the winner. I will say, in my opinion, I think there's a couple of things that great agents can do to separate themselves from the rest of the pack. Average agents can market the house, right? Good agents can market that lifestyle that goes with the house. Great agents have a way of marketing the deal and removing uncertainty before it becomes leverage for the other side. Think about 8 Mile, the movie, and B-Rabbit at the very end of it, okay? When you take away all the ammunition that somebody else can have, damn, well, what am I going to do now? Take away all the ammunition that a buyer could have, or as much as you possibly can, and that'll get you where you need to be. And great agents have a real talent in not only moving that uncertainty, but also having a way of connecting with people and making sure that they're connecting the right buyers and sellers for the place. And that's the difference, being able to communicate that stuff effectively. If a buyer has to chase answers, they gain a little bit of leverage. If the buyer discovers issues late, they definitely gain leverage. If a buyer gets nervous after the inspection, they gain leverage. We try to tell people all the time, once buyers get a property under contract, the leverage does switch from a seller to a buyer pretty quickly, because what sellers don't want to do is go back onto the market having a deal fall through, because whether it's their fault or not, the market's going to assume something's wrong with the house. And that's not a good place to be. And if a buyer has to figure out a lot of information, flood insurance, septic information, shoreline stuff, permitting, repair costs. If they have to do a lot of that stuff on their own, they're going to discount the property. I can just promise you that. Again, it goes back to that risk tolerance. Most buyers don't really have a lot, right? But they would be willing to move forward with your property, knowing they have a bunch of information. They went out and got on their own. You didn't do it. And because they now have that information, it gives them, in their mind, the leverage to come in either a little bit lower or, poke holes in whatever pristine presentation that you thought you had as a seller. And it doesn't make them bad buyers, honest to God, it doesn't. But uncertainty definitely comes with a price, right? And that's, again, I think that's why the best seller strategy is to preempt nervousness. Don't wait for the buyers to get uncomfortable. Make it easy, again, make it easy for the buyer to come in and make the right decision, right? You're eliminating objections. Answer the obvious questions before they become objections. So, in the sports world, we talk about this, maybe not all the time, but sports is probably one of the few places left that's true meritocracy in a lot of cases. There's certainly some political plays here and there, but for the most part, if you are better, you will end up getting the playing time, right? So think of presenting a property and pricing a property as an athlete that is trying to get recruited. If you're better, just be better. Shane, what the hell does that mean? If you are better, meaning you've done all the preparation, you've done all the things that you need to do, you've sacrificed in order to be the best recruit that you can be, then show the recruiters that you are better. Outplay the other athletes. It's that simple. Make the decision easy on the coaches. Make it easy on the recruiters. It's very simple. If you're the best, show that you're the best. The same thing goes for presenting a listing. That's it. If you are a seller and you want to get top dollar, well, prove it. Do the work and show that you're capable of getting top dollar. So what's actually moving the market right now in spring of 2026? What's selling a house right now? Timing is going to get you the attention. Pricing will get you taken seriously. Presentation is going to get you the emotional interest, that emotional investment that you're looking for. Documentation is going to create confidence in the buyer. Terms will get the deal done. And that's the whole game. If all 5 are working, you're creating momentum. If 1 is weak, you might still be okay. You might, for sure. If 2 or 3 are weak, the market's going to notice. And you'll notice it too as a seller, and nobody likes being a lonely seller. And that's the difference between this market and the frenzy years. That market, we'll call it the pandemic market, it covered up a lot of mistakes. It covered up mediocre photos. It covered up somebody pushing it covered up the unanswered questions pretty easily. You could make the buyer do more work, right? And in many cases, the demand was so intense that it didn't matter. But in this market today, in June of 2026, the market is not going to carry you. You have to execute. And that's why I like the phrase product launch. A listing is not something that you just put in the MLS. A listing is a product entering a competitive marketplace. And the buyer is going to ask a lot of questions, but the one that's going to matter the most is this the cleanest? Yes, available to me right now. And that's a standard. So if you're thinking about selling in Maryland or around the Chesapeake Bay this spring, here is the practical playbook. It's not theory. We're not talking motivational real estate talk. It's the actual playbook. Don't start with the house. Start with the buyer. Who is the most likely person to buy this property? Is it a move-up family? Is it a downsizer? Is it a first-time buyer stretching into the market? Is it a DC or a Baltimore commuter? Is it a second home buyer, a waterfront lifestyle buyer, a military or defense-related buyer in Southern Maryland? Is it a buyer who wants boating? Is it a buyer who wants schools? Is it a buyer who really wants walkability? Is it somebody who wants land? Is it a buyer who wants low maintenance living? Is it a buyer that wants one level living? Because different buyers care about different things. And if you don't know the buyer, you can't really price it well. You can't really prepare it that well. You can't really market the home properly because you need to know who's going to buy it. So this is where the strategy starts, not with what the seller wants, but with who the likely buyer is going to be. And then we go to step 2. Step 2, we are going to price to fresh micro comps, not stale comps, not the emotional comps, not the peak market comps, not the, well, we really need this number comps, fresh ones. Okay. What's a comp? Comparable sale. Okay. Something that's closed. And we're looking at properties that have sold that have a very similar buyer pool, that were in very similar condition, a very similar property type, and probably about the same friction level. So for waterfront, that means we're going to be looking for properties that had a similar depth, similar view, similar shoreline, the dock condition, the elevation, the flood exposure, access to the open water, renovation quality, usable outdoor lifestyle stuff, in addition to the property itself. And ideally, you would stay on the same body of water. It's not always possible, but that's what you're looking for. For a commuter property, we're going to look at the commute pattern, the school district. Where do most of the people in the community work out of? Are they local or are they driving into DC? Most of them. Are they working in Baltimore, most of them? Okay. So then we know where the buyer is likely to be coming from, right? We're going to be looking for people that are looking for a specific school district, road access, a bridge access, the MARC train access, proximity to job centers. For a turnkey home, we're going to compare that against other turnkey homes. We're not going to compare it against a teardown that was a block away. For a project home, we're going to price that project honestly, not pie in the sky number. Let's do it honestly, okay? Because a project price like a finished product, it's really not going to bring you anything. It's not good for the listing agent. It's not good for the seller. It's just going to sit, collect dust. That's a problem. Then we move on to step 3. We're going to prepare the house to feel A, like a home, and B, low hassle. It doesn't always mean that it's expensive, but it means that it's intentional. So we're going to paint the rooms that need painting. We're going to fix the obvious repairs. We're going to improve the lighting. We're going to make sure that there's more natural light coming in where we can make that happen. We're going to try and update the fixtures throughout so it looks like something that fell out of today's world, not yesteryear. We are going to clean deeply. Deep clean, guys. Don't be gross. We're going to declutter aggressively. Less is more. We're going to tighten up that curb appeal. Again, first 6 seconds make the biggest impression. They know whether they are buying that house or not within that 6 seconds. We are going to make the entry feel good. We're going to make the photos feel bright. We're going to make it feel like it could fall out of a magazine, even if it is your average frickin' house. We, together, this is a partnership, listing agent and seller. We are going to make the buyer feel like the home has been cared for, because buyers are not just comparing your home to other homes. They are comparing your home to the amount of work they think they will have to inherit after closing, and they are comparing it to the house that they are living in now. If it is a younger buyer, they are coming from most likely a luxury rental. Make it nice. The less work that a buyer feels, the larger your buyer pool gets. The larger it gets, the better your chances are of selling it quickly and for terms that are favorable to you. Step 4, we are going to build the documentation package. So this is where our sellers can really separate themselves, okay? Not just people that work with us, but people that work with any agent that are really serious about moving. Have the major system information ready to go. Roof age, HVAC age, water heater age, maintenance records, renovation records, permits where relevant, HOA or community documents, septic information if applicable, well information if that's applicable, flood insurance information if that's applicable, elevation certificates, pier, dock, shoreline, bulkhead information if it's relevant, critical area awareness, again, if it's relevant. You don't need to solve every concern in advance, but you do want the buyer to feel like they're not walking into a fog. Can be scary. And fog, even if there's a lot of interest, will create discounts. We don't want that. Step 5, let's pre-plan concessions. Don't make emotional decisions in the middle of negotiation. Decide in advance where you're going to have flexibility as a seller. Would you rather protect the price and offer a credit for something? Let's make a note of that. Would you rather fix items up front or even after an inspection, or would you rather repair concession? It's a good conversation to have before you list. Would rate buy down help expand your buyer pool? That's a question your agent is going to answer. Maybe. It'll depend on the price band. If you can be flexible on a settlement date, is that something that we can make a note of? Would a cleaner inspection posture create a stronger offer? Usually, yeah. The goal in having these discussions in advance with your agent, it's not to just pre-plan to, oh, we're going to give everything away. It's to find a way to structure the cleanest yes. Okay. And that's a little bit of a mindset shift for a lot of sellers that have been used to, the market the last 5 years. So instead of asking how high can we push this, ask how can we create the cleanest offering? How can we create the cleanest yes for buyers? And you might end up pushing up the price that way, right? So something to definitely think about. Step 6, we're going to have to watch the first week like a hawk, plain and simple. The market speaks pretty early. So if showings are light, that's your feedback right there. We're either priced too high or the presentation's not quite there. If showings are strong, but the offers are not coming in, that's feedback. If the buyers like the location, but they mention condition, that's feedback. If agents keep asking about insurance and a bunch of other information, flood, septic, whatever, that's also feedback. Don't get defensive, all right? Let's be useful. Let's get useful if we haven't been at the start. The best sellers respond before the listing gets stale. The worst sellers wait until the market's already kind of made up its mind, and then they just end up chasing the market. So let's talk about, speaking of stale listings, let's talk about the risk, because that's a part that really nobody wants to think about before listing. What happens when the seller ignores, the new rules? Usually kind of starts with an aspirational price, right? Somebody is this, maybe it's a ridiculous price. Sometimes it's not, but like it's an aspirational price. Let's just leave it at that. A little too high, a little too proud, a little too anchored in a market that's not quite here right now. And then it launches and the first few days are quieter than kind of expected. And showings are okay, but they're not great. Agents are very polite. Buyers will say things like, it's a really nice house, but, and that but is expensive, right? It's a nice house, but the price feels high. Nice house, but the carpet needs to go. Nice house, but we are not sure about the flooding situation. The roof is older. The shoreline looks pretty expensive. It is. The payment's a little bit of a stretch for us. There's another one that we like better. That's how momentum starts kind of leaking out of a listing. It's not really all at once. It's just a little bit at a time. It's poking holes in something. But maybe a reduction works. Maybe. But oftentimes, the seller is now kind of negotiating from a little bit of a weaker position, right? Because the listing has history, buyers can see it, agents can see it, the market's already voted once, but now the seller is trying to win back that urgency and that they could have or should have created at the launch. And look, I'm not saying this to put blame on sellers, because certainly agents, and I've been absolutely guilty of this too, we will push it because we feel like we can. And we feel like, damn, in that moment that I'm doing this assessment, I feel like we could get this number. I feel like we could push harder and get this. And admittedly, sometimes we're wrong. And that's a live and you learn type lesson. But the question is, can we pivot quickly? Because when it's in that urgent space as a listing, buyers will take notice of it. And not to say that it's a fire sale situation, but they will take notice of it and you will get the reaction that you're hoping for, right? You're going to get either more showings on it or better feedback, or you know what? At this price, I feel like I can tackle some of the things that might still need to be done, or I feel comfortable making an offer. That offer is probably still not going to come in at a number that you like, but you live and you learn and you negotiate and you see where you can bridge that gap. So what's the cost of overpricing something? It's not just that price reduction that you're thinking about. I would say more than anything else is probably that lost momentum, right? It's a little bit weaker leverage, but when you're in a market that has 2 to 4 months of inventory, you still have some leverage as a seller because there's frankly just not enough inventory out there, right? But the cost is also extra carrying time for sure. So you're paying more in taxes, more in utilities, more in mortgage payments, more insurance. The other kind of unspoken cost is buyer suspicion, right? I wonder what's up with that thing. So when you have to do a reduction, sometimes they're going into it now, not looking for reasons to not spend the money, but now it's like, all right, it's been on and they've already done a reduction. What issues are here? So they kind of go through it with that, looking for different things that might be wrong with it. And that's really not what you want a buyer to do. Granted, it's a market right now where when they're not jazzed about the payment, unless it is freaking awesome, you're probably going to get that anyways. So is it the end of the world? No. But if you price something right on day one and it's not really, a conservative number, but it can be deemed an aggressive number, you're going to more than likely have the psychology of the buyer where you want it to be for them to make a very quick and deliberate decision to move forward with an offer on your place. And it's going to be at a number that you hopefully will find acceptable, with terms that are acceptable, and it's within that launch window. And that is, I think when you price something to sell, buyers respect that behavior from the seller. They're going to be irritated if they don't get it, don't get me wrong. But that's a lesson for that buyer to learn, hey, if I really want something and it does check the boxes and these guys did prepare accordingly, then I know that if this opportunity does come up again, I better be ready. I better be ready to go all in if I don't want to lose out on something like that. And so it's a learning experience for a buyer in that case. So they will respect you as a seller. Not that that's something that you're really looking for, but the marketplace in general, they're going to respect an aggressive out price, right? So in general, here's going to be my takeaway from this. Spring 2026 is still going to offer a lot of opportunity for people. Our area has a ton of demand. We're very fortunate in that respect. Frankly, it's because of the lifestyle options that are here between the water, the access, the history, the boating, the summer, the activities that you could do, the communities that we have available here. All of that stuff is fantastic and it matters to people. It drives our markets. And this is a great time for our market. It's a great time to be selling something. The market in general, from a buying perspective, is buying value. They're buying clarity. They're buying confidence. They're buying a payment that works. They're buying a deal that feels clean. And winners so far this spring, and I think it'll continue into summer, are not the sellers who really show up during the peak season. It's the sellers who really took the opportunity to treat their listing like it's a product launch. And they hit the right demand window. They priced it for today's local comps, and they were able to answer those buyers' questions before those questions even crept in. And that is a trend that I don't see really changing anytime soon, really for the rest of 2026. And it's something that I think all sellers or people that are considering selling, or frankly, buyers, have to understand. This is who you're competing with right now. Other buyers are having similar mentalities, and you're going to be going up against people that have maybe lost out on a couple things that they really wanted. That those things that they really wanted, a lot of people went after because the sellers did what they needed to do. They prepped it accordingly. They operated that whole listing like it was a product launch, like it's a new iPhone. They had a bunch of people clamoring to buy it. So if you find yourself in a situation like that as a buyer, you might need to be willing to concede on things that to date you probably haven't been in order to acquire what you want. Houses are going to move when the lifestyle is compelling. Certainly the numbers make sense and buyers have enough certainty to say yes. Bottom line is the spring is going to get you seen as a seller, but the fundamentals are going to get you sold. And that, my friends, is it for this episode of the Dealmakers. The market is local, the details matter, and the deal is usually won before the offer. Peace, everybody. We'll see you guys next time.